Great. Now, before we get started, as we are still gathering in person, I'd like to officially recognise the traditional custodians of country through Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders, past and present, and extend the respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Now, we're going to set aside some time for questions towards the end of the webinar, but please feel free to pop your questions in the chat box as we go. And while I introduce our speaker, perhaps you could get started using the chat box by letting us know where you're logging in from today. Today, we're joined by Angela Smith, who's taking us through the second session in the Wind Down Wednesday webinar series, the Triad of Well-Being, where we're going to focus on food, sleep and exercise. Many of you that are joining us today have joined us last week, but for those that are not familiar with Angela, I'd like to introduce you to her. A member of the Melbourne Business Network, Angela supports professionals to remain committed without becoming consumed, burned out and effectual. Creating her Mind Your Mojo program, Angela guides professionals to foster positive habits to counter the negative impacts of stress to help prevent burnout. Her program emphasises how over time, positive resilience habits will become hardwired into the brain, and ultimately boosting a person's resilience is the important part of what we need to do. Angela is sharing highlights from this program with us on our Wind Down Wednesday series today. Angela, hi and welcome.
Hello, good to see you.
Hi. Just want to kick off by asking you a question, Angela. You've delivered your Mind Your Mojo program on site and on workshops and coaching, as well as speaking at conferences and special events. But it looks like COVID's changed your ability to deliver in this way. So can you just tell us briefly how COVID's impacted your business?
Yes, well, like many others, first of all, let me say hello to everyone. It's really good to see you. I've done, I think, 4 or 5 Zoom sessions today, and I do learn a little something in every meeting. In today's already, I've learned how to use the gallery view, so it's really good to see everyone. I see a little bit of Sienna, a little Tuscany, beautiful. And thank you very much for welcoming me into your day today to help you wind down on a Wednesday. It's hump day, and to look at how you can look after yourselves. And, you know, because as business leaders and business owners, we need to look after ourselves first so that we can look after those around us and our business. And yes, come COVID, my goodness, my business world completely changed. I was doing a lot of on-site work, and, you know, as we start coming toward the end of the financial year, I do a number of partner conferences with law firms and accountancy firms. And so I was also prepared to do some work with different educational institutions as well. So I was super jazzed and excited. And by the end of March, my business really had completely stopped. And while things were put on hold indefinitely, it's really hard to plan for an indefinite time frame. So my business really just stopped, and it's given me the time to reflect on what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and what's really relevant for people in this space, and also how to deliver it. And what I'm learning is that people are really excited about coming together when the restrictions ease and we can start to gather again. So instead of, or in addition to perhaps some of the on-site work that I'll continue to do that, and the special event days and such, but I'm looking at doing some urban retreats so that professionals can come together, whether it's a half day or a full day. I'm still not too sure what that's going to look like, but we're going to do a deeper dive into this resilience work, resilience strategies, some mindfulness to boost ethical capabilities as well. So in a bit of shameless promotion, since I have the floor, for anyone here who's watching today, if you're interested in participating in one of my focus groups, please reach out, because I do want to hear from real life professionals, because otherwise I'm sitting at home making this stuff up on my own. I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in participating in a focus group. In exchange for your time, what I'm doing is I'm offering my clients and others a 2-for-1 special on an upcoming urban retreat, whenever that may be. But it's all going to be formed based on the information from these focus groups. So if you're keen, you get to meet a few people, please reach out, let me know. Thank you.
Fabulous. Now, Angela, I don't know if you've checked your chat box. We've got someone signing in from Miami, Florida.
How
I don't know if
exciting.
that's somebody that you know, because they're asking if you colour your hair.
How exciting.
Just to, take a little deviation in the content today.
I have no idea who that is at the moment, but no.
2 a.m. in the morning.
Have I colored it? No. Look, I call it mature blonde.
Fabulous.
I've stopped coloring it and now it's mature blonde.
Angela, before we get into the full session today, I just want to quickly do a recap on our first session. And I know that we've got some people that did join us from last time. So perhaps while I'm recapping, those people might be able to tell me how they've boosted their resilience in the last week. It'd be good to hear how you've made some changes. So last week you shared your approach to resilience, which is really to focus on 4 aspects. Number 1 being social resilience, like the people around us who support us and who we support. Emotional resilience, like being aware of how we're feeling about things and managing our mood. Mental resilience, like what's going on in our mind and paying attention to our thoughts, improving our mental focus. And that little fun finger game that we did that demonstrated that was fun. And physical resilience, making sure our bodies are healthy with a good immune system. So I remembered that you did say that you advocate doing something in each of these categories regularly to build positive resilience habits, whether that's every day, every week, or every month, or all of the above, depending on the activity, of course. So Angela, now let's talk about today's topic, the Triad of Well-Being.
Righto, the Triad. I look at the Triad as what we eat, the activity that we have in our life, and sleeping. While to me, they all intertwine. They just weave together so beautifully that I do call them the Triad. So while they often might look just on the surface that the Triad, eating, sleeping, and our diet, relate just to our physical resilience, in many ways, they actually tick all 4 resilience boxes. So if you go for a walk with a friend or a neighbor, you're moving your body, so you're ticking the physical resilience box. You're having a chat with someone. Hopefully you're walking at a nice leisurely pace with someone you enjoy. So you're engaging, you have a little bit of social resilience because you're connecting with someone that you like, you care about, and generally cares about you. So there's some social resilience there. And if you're having a chat maybe about things that are on your mind, having a conversation about something that uplifts you in whatever way that may be, that is speaking then to our emotional resilience. And then of course we know that anytime we're exercising our body, it also impacts our brain. So it helps us to think more clearly. So what we're doing there as well, now we're taking the mental resilience box. So one little exercise such as just walking can just tick all of our resilience boxes. So yes, I think if it's okay, we'll start with exercise. Where I want to end is with sleep, because sleep is really such a superpower for us. And while it might sound like a real sleepy topic, sleep is our superpower. So I'd like to spend most of my time, if I can, chatting about sleep. But let's start with exercise. As I said, I started with going for a walk with someone. But the thing to remember, well, since we're working from home, I think it's been 10 weeks. Someone mentioned today that we've been working from home for about 10 weeks. And I find that really quite strange because in some ways time has flown by, but at the same time, it's also stood still. Does anyone else feel that? I find just the timing around this very strange. So we've been living in this new world where we're working from home, and we may not have as much passive exercise as we would have if we were either, running for the train or the tram, running, getting to our car, walking between meetings, taking the stairs at work, or going to our gym class after work. We don't have as many of those passive opportunities throughout our days. We've had to be really cognizant of bringing in activity. And for some people, it just hasn't happened. I know some of us have a few COVID curves that we need to, deal with and flatten along the way too. So exercise has been really key.
So Angela, look, I remember last week you were talking about, this propensity of us to ignore those little timers to get us up and get us moving. So, we are in this different state of play at the moment. How much exercise should we actually be doing?
Yeah, good question, because some people, we often tend to think it's an all or nothing approach. You know, if I can't get to the gym for an hour, or if I can't take an hour or an hour and a half in the morning, I'm not going to do it at all. And we need to start to shift our thinking, just that really any time that we're moving our bodies, we're helping our bodies to be healthy. Our lungs are able to expand if we're able to get, some nice deep breaths in. So we're improving the health of our bodies and our brains anytime that we're moving. And whether it's, I use a stand-up desk at home, which is where I'm at now, although my computer is perched rather precariously atop my stand-up desk. So I might end up having to do a little bit of juggling if I have to catch it. But we do just want to bring a little activity even into every day, whether it is, if you have time to do a full workout at home and you're motivated and disciplined, that's fantastic. Whether it's watching a video, if you like yoga classes or Tai Chi. If those don't interest you, we are doing a lot of telephone calls, telephone meetings, whether it's a walk and talk, just taking the phone outside, having a walk through your neighborhood, doing one of those meetings. I was speaking to someone this morning who, what they've started to do, since we can get takeaway coffees, she had a colleague who lived nearby. They were meeting up in their neighborhood, getting a takeaway coffee, and doing some laps of their local parks. So starting to just find little ways to weave in a little bit, even just a little bit of activity, just to get the heartbeat going, get a little bit of exercise, and start to build these habits, starting also to think about what happens when we transition into the next phase of our recovery. Where can you bring the physical activity in? We think the gyms are going to open, hopefully around the end of June or July, perhaps, whenever that may be. But until then, starting to look at where in the day can you bring in a little exercise. And it might be running up and down stairs, depending on where your laundry is, depending on how good your knees are. Is that all right for you? And, just maybe even doing some stretching while the kettle is burning, while the kettle is boiling, for sure. And why we want to exercise, not only is it helping our body, I think I mentioned our brain as well. When we exercise, we're releasing endorphins, so we're releasing some stress, and that helps us to sleep a little bit better, maybe get to sleep a little easier at night, and also improving our mood. Because if we're stressed, if we can go out either for a jog or a walk or have some activity, as I say, those endorphins are released, and it does help to improve our mood. And I don't know if I'm such a scientist nerd. There is the new Surgeon General of California, who is a Canadian woman. That's maybe why she stood out for me. Dr. Nadine Harris. I know, some people watch all the celebrities and such. No, I'm stalking neuroscientists and researchers. So Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, what she has done in her research, she has found that when we exercise, there's a protein in the brain that is released. It's BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, that is released when we exercise. And she says it's like miracle grow for our brain. So, one of these little healthy solutions that we give our plants to help them grow. She says it's when we exercise, it's like giving our brains miracle grow. And it helps to not only build our muscles in our body, but it is impacting our brain, which this protein is really important for memory. And I'll talk a little bit about memory, sleep, the importance of sleeping and memory. But if we get a little bit of a double hit. So when we're exercising, we're helping our brain. And then of course, we're able to sleep a little better at night, perhaps. And again, helping to improve the health of our brain.
Oh, so we've covered the activities that we can be doing through COVID. Mm-hmm. You've talked about things that we can do externally. What about like when we're sitting at the desk, for people like me that get that little reminder but don't take any notice of it?
Don't take any notice? Yes.
No. Well, I do. I mean, I know it goes off, but that's about it,
Yeah, so that's the second part, isn't it? We know that the alarm is going off, then we have to do something. So that is part of the discipline. But I'll share with you something that I do with groups, because we sit at our desks a lot and we're on our keyboards. And I don't know, sometimes our hands are in funny positions, and perhaps we get a little bit of atrophy in our wrists. They can get really tight. So For those of you who are interested in doing a little exercise, in a moment, what I'll do is invite you to stand up. And what we're going to do is just extend our arms out at shoulder height. We don't want the arms to be too high, but just out at shoulder height and making a couple of fists. And what we're going to do is write the alphabet with our hands. So not only is it a little physical, it's a little bit of mental concentration as well. So for those of you who are up for a little bit of writing the alphabet with your wrists, as I say, it's a great way just to release the wrists throughout the day. I like to start, I'm very cold in the morning, and so I like to warm my body up actually just by doing some of these in the morning and also at the end of the day, just to release the tension in my wrists. So for those of you who are keen to have a little go, stand on up, get comfy, and just extending the arms out at shoulder height, making a couple of fists. What we're going to do is write the alphabet, and you have a choice. You can use whichever font you prefer, any language you prefer, any size, any dimension, whatever you like. Whenever you're ready, 1, 2, 3, go. Let's just start to write the alphabet. It looks like we're all conducting orchestras. But we're getting nice movement throughout our wrists. Maybe a little bit of snapping going on. There we go. And whenever you're ready, just give them a shake. I like this part when I do face-to-face sessions, because I say if anyone's rings or jewelry come flying, that's part of my retirement fund. So there you go. Okay, just releasing the hands and just noticing if you feel a little bit of tingling maybe in your palms and around your wrists, just had a little bit of motion there. And that exercise was shared with me by a physiotherapist who worked with my cousin who has rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought, oh, what a great little exercise, and nice one to do at our desks because we do a lot of this. So let's just release our hands. So again, just a fun little way to bring a little bit of movement into the day.
Great. Now, do you think we've covered off exercise?
Yeah.
Maybe we should move into one of my favourite things.
Food.
Yeah,
mine too. And there might, in fact, be a little dog that wanders past in a little while looking for a little food, because it's about that time. So don't be surprised if you see a little furry thing behind me. Probably start scratching. So I do refer to this part of the triad as diet. And by diet, I don't mean, the cabbage diet or the tomato diet or the watermelon diet. Diet is about what we habitually eat, what we regularly eat. And what we eat is effectively the petrol that we're putting into our tanks to keep us running both now and into the future. Our brain is always on. We think that when we're sleeping, it's nothing's really happening, but we still need our brain to help us breathe and to keep our hearts beating. So we need to keep our brain fueled. So there's a real connection between the food that we eat and our mood. So the connection between food and mood. I don't know if you've come across anyone or sometimes young kids, when their blood sugar crashes, they start to get kind of cranky, and there's a whole lot of squealing that goes on, and maybe someone needs a couple carrots or an apple. But there's that real connection between food and mood, and we see it in adults as well. So we want to watch what we're eating. And, like a real swish car, our brain functions the best when it gets that really premium fuel, that premium petrol. So eating good quality foods that have lots of good vitamins and minerals and antioxidants are going to help to look after our body as well as our brain. And I keep coming back to sleep. So what we eat and when we eat also affects our brain and our sleep. Generally, as a rule, we want to have about 2 to 3 hours after our last meal before we go to bed. We don't want to go to bed on too much of a full stomach, and preferably not on such an empty one, because that might wake us up. And of course, there are some people who are having a go with the intermittent fasting, and so that's a separate story, but we'll just put that aside. But generally, if you're not intermittent fasting, we want to have a few hours between our last meal and before going to bed, so that our body just rests comfortably. It isn't looking for food, and it isn't working too hard to digest it either.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got a question from the audience here, and it's really about advocating any particular way of eating, like any particular diets. Like, you know, there's all sorts of things out there, paleo diet, there's a 2-5, fasting,
Yeah.
you know, intermittent fasting, any of those things.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, you know, we all have different likes and dislikes, and each of our bodies, you know, is impacted so differently by what we eat, that I think what's important, you know, depending on your lifestyle and what you like and what works best for your body, is to find what works for you. And I know I've been a vegetarian for more than 30 years. I thought it was 10, and then I did the math and I realized it's actually been more than 30. So, but for me, that works well. You know, I think for anyone who has any questions, definitely speak to your GP, a dietitian, a nutritionist, and, you know, maybe look at some different ways of eating to help you get as healthy as you can be.
Do you have any tips about something that's really good for the metabolism, given that we're so sedentary?
Well, look, I've heard some of the spices can be helpful for metabolism. If you like ginger, apparently turmeric is good. I'm not a fan, but apparently some of the spices. But again, that's if you like spices. I love spice that will blow my head off. So I know that's not relevant. Not everyone does. So again, it's finding those things that you really enjoy and are easy to integrate into your regular lifestyle, so it doesn't have to become a big event.
Cool. Angela, you've covered diet and exercise, and you've mentioned now that having some activity during the day can help us to sleep, even though that when we're sleeping, our brain's being fueled by our diet. So we've got some advice on that. So let's talk about sleep now.
Oh, good. We're ready for sleep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're not. We're ready to hear about sleep.
Yeah. Stay awake for the next, 25 or 30 minutes. And so sleep. I do get really excited about sleep because for so long I took it for granted. I think particularly at the start of my career when I was a young whippersnapper, sleep was not important to me. I thought I could easily just run the world and take care of everything. I didn't need to sleep. And with a little bit of this, a little coffee, I could absolutely save the world. So I really took my sleep for granted and didn't realize just how important it is. And I think I shared last time part of my burnout story when I ended up in hospital after having grand mal seizures. As the neurologist said, that I was like a big electrical panel who had blown every single fuse. And the way I did that was through lack of sleep. So what I have found is that the researchers who I've spoken to and the neurologists, they say that sleep is a non-negotiable biological necessity. And you know what? They're right. I tried to prove them wrong, but they're right. So sleep really is equally as important to our lives and to our bodies as our diet and our exercise. It's really a life support system, and it's Mother Nature's best effort yet at immortality. You know, what's happening when we're sleeping? Well, our bodies actually require long periods of sleep so that our bodies can restore, rejuvenate, regrow muscle, repair tissue, and synthesize hormones. So when we sleep, our bodies are actually starting to recalibrate our immune system. And this time of year particularly, yes, we're in the world of COVID, but we're starting to come into cold and flu season. So we want really good immune systems. So we need our bodies to have that good restoration so that our immune systems can be working and functioning as well as they can be. And you may have heard the saying that, oh, you know, you can sleep when you're dead. Well, that was certainly what I lived by when I was, 18, 21, 25, maybe even 30. I loved just to be able to just push through, and because there was just so much to do and all these great things happening. I can sleep when I'm dead. Well, the problem with that is I was listening to a researcher who said actually thinking that way is mortally unwise. And the simple truth is that the shorter our sleep, the shorter our lives. So what starts to happen is that our short sleep is starting to predict all-cause mortality. And again, when our sleep is compromised, when we're not having great sleep, our immune system cannot be repaired. And again, we need that sleep to be able to fight off infection, have our immune systems really working to fight off infection and to try to prevent any flare-ups of any other chronic illnesses or diseases that we may have. And, you know, when we don't get enough sleep, I don't know if you found, but it really impacts our diet. When I'm tired, I reach for more carbs. I want all the comfort food, and those might be things that I might reach for as a treat. But when I'm really tired, I want French fries, lots of pasta, you know, probably not a fruit or vegetable in my world. I just want heavy carbs. And that's not necessarily good overall as a diet consistently. And as well, when we're tired, we can be cranky, or as my family says, the official line is I'm snippy. That's when I'm tired, and that's my cue to know that I'm starting to sort of hit that boundary where I'm going to start impacting my relationships, because I'm not coming from a place where I'm well rested. In fact, I'm reacting. And again, that can start to impact our social resilience, because we may be negatively impacting some of our relationships. Let's see, what else can I tell you?
Angela,
yes.
I've just got a couple of questions from the chat box, and I want to
Great.
get them to you before we move into other topics. And the questions that are coming in are around alcohol and coffee.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, either or, you know.
I've just enlarged my chat box, pardon me.
Okay.
There we go, I can see you guys again, good.
So it's about that nightcap or cup of coffee that's, you know, that we tend to be having more of, and before bed.
Yes, okay. We'll start with the coffee that I'm drinking. Well, here's what's happening. It takes about an hour for when we have caffeine, whether it's coffee, it might be in, you know, in a Coke or a Pepsi, whatever soda pop you might be drinking. So it takes about an hour for the caffeine to fully hit its peak for us. So I've been well caffeinated for a little while. While it takes an hour for that to hit its peak, it takes about 24 hours for the caffeine to totally leave our bodies. So we want to be really mindful of how much coffee or how much caffeine we're having. And we might find as well that we become immune, we think we become immune to it. Oh, I can, you know, I have a sister-in-law who says, oh, I need a cup of coffee before I can sleep. She's convinced that she needs coffee to get to sleep. I think it's in her mind. But what's really starting to happen is she is so she's exhausted, so she may fall asleep. But throughout the night, she's waking up and she's having really poor sleep. And that's something that also starts to happen with alcohol. We might have a few extra wines after dinner, not just with our dinner, but maybe after as well. There might be a nice little whiskey nightcap that turns into maybe 2 or 3 little nightcaps on a cold evening. And what happens with alcohol is that it tricks us into thinking that we're getting a really good sleep. It might help us fall asleep faster, but our overall sleep quality is quite reduced. It's not what we want. So it might help us get to sleep, but what it's doing is it's disrupting our sleep overall. And one of the reasons it's happening is that alcohol is considered a type of drug or a class of drug known as sedatives. So what's actually happening is we're sedated, and sedation is not sleep. They're two very different states for our brain. So what's happening when we're drinking alcohol, especially later at night before going to bed, is that we're knocking out our cortex and we're going into a state of sedation, not natural sleep. As well, what starts to happen through the night after we've had a few drinks is we do start to wake up more often, but we may not remember that we're waking up. I mean, we might not wake up to the point where we're standing up and walking around our room, but we are waking up, but we'll fall back to sleep and waking up and falling back to sleep. But we don't always put the 2 and 2 together. So it's not a restful, restorative sleep. And secondly, what's happening is the alcohol blocks our REM sleep, our rapid eye movement sleep. And our REM sleep is super important for a number of functions, such as our emotional and mental health. We want to have those cycles of REM sleep. It's critical. And I have a study here that back in the 80s, my decade of choice, there was a study about, yeah, thank you, Wendy. Back in the 80s, these researchers found that if they deprived rats of that REM, that rapid eye movement sleep, they would die almost as quickly as they would from total starvation, from food deprivation. So that's pretty significant. So we really need that REM sleep. And unfortunately, our DNA, I understand, is quite similar to rats, but that's another story. So our REM sleep is really important. Unfortunately, alcohol can negatively impact it. So we do want to make sure, check to see when you're going to cut off your alcohol in the evening. Again, being mindful of just how much you're drinking and when. And if it turns out you've just had, maybe that little extra nightcap and it's a little bit later, try and drink some water just to help to flush that out as soon as possible. It might mean that you still have to get up in the night. So again, that might be disrupting your sleep as well.
So on the flip side of that, Angela, we've got some questions that are coming in around what food or drinks might actually do the opposite, help us to relax and get to sleep.
Well, chamomile tea for many, again, it comes back to what you like. And chamomile tea seems to be one that a lot of people turn to or reach to at night. Sometimes just warm water, just a nice, maybe not so tasty for some, but for others, just a little bit of warm water, maybe some lemon and honey to help the body relax. Some people turn to bananas as a way, the potassium in the bananas to help them sleep. Maybe some warm milk. Again, depends what you like, what your taste buds are happy with. And sometimes there's a little bit of experimentation as well. Again, if you don't want to go to sleep on a totally empty stomach, again, unless you're doing the intermittent fasting. But sometimes if we're hungry before bed, maybe just a couple of crackers. I have a friend who, for a while, went through a period of she couldn't sleep. She'd wake up at night and start to make a full fettuccine Alfredo. I don't think that was the best activity for her, but she loved getting up in the night if she couldn't sleep, making fettuccine. And I couldn't believe it. We had a long talk about why she was doing that. And it turns out, she had a lot on her mind. There were other things going on. And eventually we managed to get her onto soda crackers and a banana. Mm-hmm.
There's been a little bit of chat in the chat room here, Angela, around cat naps. You've talked about the importance of sleep. You've talked about the importance of the REM sleep. So the question is, can cat naps make up for that lost sleep and the enhanced brain activity?
Oh, look, the thing is, cat naps, when we have shortened sleep during the week, we actually can't catch up on our sleep. Unfortunately, sleeping is not like like going to the bank or a credit system. We can't actually accumulate sleep so that we can draw from it in the future. We do need to be really mindful of how much sleep we're getting regularly, consistently. If insomnia is an issue, we want to be mindful to not have the cat naps. As delicious as a cat nap is, I think they're wonderful. To me, it's one of the most exciting things to do on holidays, to have a nice little cat nap during the day. But if we're having problems sleeping at night, we do want to try and cut those cat naps out because it will impact us later. But when it comes to trying to catch up on sleep later in the week, we're not doing it. It doesn't work that way. We can't catch up on our sleep, unfortunately. Let's see, I had some stats here. Pardon me, I'm just going to pull them out. The lack of our sleeplessness here in Australia, I'm curious to know how much sleep does everyone get a night on average, or how much sleep did you have last night? I'd love to know. Oh, sorry, I keep opening my chat box. Too big. Yes, my friend eating her fettuccine. So
perhaps, Angela, while you're doing that, people could put in the chat box how much sleep they've had last night. We can do a bit of a
6.5
comparison.
Yep.
That'd be interesting.
Jeez, yes.
There's a lot of chat about cheese too. Do you have an opinion on that?
I love cheese. Cheese to me is an entire food group. It's one of the foundations of my food pyramid.
What about the serotonin in it that is apparently a neurotransmitter that encourages the body to relax, according to
Yeah.
one of our specialists in the chat room?
Yeah. I didn't realize that serotonin was in cheese, but to me, that's just one more reason to eat more cheese.
Me too. I'm all on board for cheese. All right, so we're getting
Fantastic.
6 and 7 hours a night. Oh, Kara's
Right,
about
five. Okay. Wow.
So it's
let me
below
show,
what we should be getting, is it?
about 5. Yeah, 6.5.
Mm.
Right. Well, what we want to be striving for, and again, it depends on the individual, is between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. Pardon me. I'm just sorry. Here we go. On average, Australians are getting about 6.5 hours of sleep per night. And about 10% of us are getting even less than the 6.5. Now, our sleeplessness is racking up an annual health bill here in Australia of about $1.8 billion and productivity losses of upwards of 18 billion per year. And I think it's interesting, since we've been working from home, sometimes that delineation between home and work is getting really grayed, so we may be working longer hours without realizing it. Perhaps after 10 weeks, some of us are starting to find more structure in our days. But when we, if we're working on big projects, pulling long hours, it's our sleep that is really, really waning. We're not getting to sleep and we're missing out. So we do want to be mindful. For people who sleep 5 hours or less per night, those people have about a 65% greater chance of dying earlier at any time. This one's interesting. Men who sleep for just 4 to 5 hours a night will have a testosterone level, which is that of about someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep actually starts to age a man. And we do see similar stats in women and women's reproductive systems as well. So that's concerning. And so our sleep. Trying to think, what else can I tell you about sleep?
Well, Angela, if you don't mind, I've got another question that's come through.
Hit me.
So one of the participants is asking, how do I stop myself falling asleep on the sofa, then going to bed and not being able to sleep when I'm in bed?
All right. I have a client who I think I might have mentioned last week, who would come home from work or, go to her yoga class, come home, make dinner, and then just veg out on the sofa, fall asleep. It would be 3 o'clock in the morning. So what she would do was set an alarm to go to sleep. And so she would set an alarm on her phone for 9:30 or 10 o'clock, so that if she fell asleep, which she often did in front of the TV, the alarm would go off and she could then actually go to bed and start, the sleep ritual, if you'd like to call it that. Or, when we start to prepare for bed, it might even be to set that alarm so even if we're awake, to, at 9:30 or 9 o'clock, half an hour before going to bed, that we then know, okay, it's now time. I've got to start getting on the sleep program. So I'm now going to put on my pajamas, or maybe it's a nice warm shower. Maybe it's having the banana and a couple of crackers first. If you notice that your stomach is a little bit empty, maybe having the warm shower, starting to prepare for bed, so that we start to think, our mindset starts to shift. Okay, time, I'm actually winding down, and we're giving ourselves that time to start to settle, starting to wind down and going to bed. But you asked as well if we wake up in the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we wake up in the night and we are unable to get back to sleep, say within 5, 10, 15 minutes, we want to then leave the bedroom. If I know for myself, there are times I wake up and I know instantly I'm not falling back to sleep. I'm wide awake. So what the researchers tell us is because we want to really associate the bed with, basically sleeping. If we're starting to wake up, let's leave the bedroom. It might mean going into another room, listening to some nice relaxing music. It might be reading a book. If there's something that isn't too mentally stimulating, if you have something to read that is just very relaxing. Some people like to read poetry, whatever it might be for you. But to do something that takes you out of the bedroom, start to relax, and when you start to feel sleepy again, going back to bed. One of the practices that, because I'm also a yoga and meditation teacher, something I do with people is a body scan practice. And if we even have enough time today, I can take people through that. Body scan practices are really just a way to start to feel the body. It takes our mind off of whatever brain train might be happening for us. If we're, ruminating on our day, and we want to take our mind off of those thoughts, we can start to just take our attention to the body and slowly work our way, from the top of our head down to our toes, start to relax the body. And while some people can do that automatically for themselves, for others, it's really nice to have that practice guided. So there are a number of apps such as Insight Timer, I think Calm is another one, perhaps Headspace. There's heaps of apps. The one that I use, I've been using for many years, is Insight Timer. And you find a voice that you like, you find a practice that you like. There's some voices that just grate on my nerves and I can't listen to them. I don't find them relaxing at all. But to find a voice that you find soothing, whether there's music or no music, depending on what you like, that can take you through that practice to at least relax the body, and then perhaps notice just how that helps you to fall asleep. And even if you don't fall asleep, if that doesn't happen straight away, it is allowing you to relax, and it takes the body into that parasympathetic state, that peaceful state, where even though we may not be sleeping, our heartbeat lowers, our blood pressure lowers, and our body does start to restore as well. And in one of our future sessions, I'm not sure if it's the next one or the one after, where I do talk about the autonomic nervous system and the importance of being able to take ourselves into that peaceful state deliberately when we want to. And a simple body scan practice is one way. There are many times during the day I forget my glasses or my car keys, or during my lunch, whatever it is. But when it comes time to wanting to deliberately calm myself, I always have my body with me. I always have my body and my breath. So there are different practices that we can do just to help calm and soothe, relax our body. And a body scan practice is one way. Now, let's see, I can see a few questions. I'm happy to take people through a guided practice. Are there any other questions or anything else you'd like me to touch on?
We do have a question from Tia, a friend in Miami, who's asking about whether you recommend a certain time frame when an individual should go to bed, or is it like the same time every night? Like, is it the ritual, or is it a certain time?
Well, again, it's about what works for you and your lifestyle, as long as it's consistent, whether it's a work week or a weekend. The more consistent we be, and I know that might sound really boring, but the more consistent we can be with the same time that we go to sleep and the same time that we wake up, that's just going to help keep our rhythm of when we're sleeping and when we're awake. So going to sleep, we generally want to have between 7 and 9 hours per night per person. Some people are working shift work, so what time that might be for you is, it's going to be different for each of us, depending on what our days look like. If we can start to wind down half an hour or an hour before we go to bed, the more time, the better, of course. But for some people, that might just be 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Finding the activities that work, that are meaningful for you. Some people love to have a hot shower, a nice warm shower, or a bath before bed. Some people might find that they're still kind of jittery. They haven't had enough activity during the day, so their body isn't tired. So perhaps if you're able to get outside and have a little walk around the block, nothing too vigorous, but just a little stroll, warm shower, see how your stomach is feeling. Do you need a little food? And then start to prepare for bed in those ways that start to trigger your mindset so that your brain starts to know it's time for bed, it's time for sleep, and start to have those rituals, whatever might be meaningful for you.
So Angela, we've got a question from Cara. We're all addicted to our devices these days. So Cara's question is, when you talk about relaxing and reading, it's a book versus a screen?
Yeah, from all the reading that I have done, and the researchers whom I've spoke with, they want to ban all technology from the bedroom. I understand that there are some screens, that the nighttime screens as well on some of the on iPads and Kindles and such. The researchers I've spoken to, they say, if it's a Kindle or nothing, go with nothing. Try to listen to some nice relaxing music so that we're not stimulating the brain through the light of that screen. And again, they say no technology in the bedroom. So no Netflix in bed, you know, leave that for the lounge room. Try and leave the bedroom really for sleeping so that we're triggered. We know going to bed, this is where I sleep. This is where my body rests.
We've got one more question and then we might have some time to do that exercise.
Okay.
And the question is about when is the best time to actually do the meditation or the exercise?
Yeah, and again, I think it comes back to the individual. There are some people who might like to do that meditation as part of their, bedtime prep. Perhaps it's before going into the shower, if that's what you're doing. Perhaps it's once you're in bed. I know for myself, I do a body scan practice and I can fall asleep almost, within minutes. I don't necessarily even reach my toes some night and I'm asleep. So I think it depends if that's a practice that works for you. Absolutely, try that in bed. Unfortunately, sometimes that may mean that we're breaking the technology rule if we're listening to it on an app on our phone. With a number of those apps, once the practice is completed, it will turn off. So, you just need to make sure that you have, the ringer turned off on your phone so that throughout the night, your phone is otherwise off. But if it's one of those nights where you're unable to sleep or you wake up in the middle of the night, go into another room, try the practice. It might help you just relax so that then you can take yourself off back to bed and try to get to sleep again.
Great.
So I hope that helps.
Certainly a lot to think about, Angela. Thank you.
I know, sleeping, there's so much going on with our sleep.
So the exercise, would you like to take us through that?
Absolutely, thank you. So this is just a simple body scan practice. And what we're going to do is just move our awareness from the top of our head down to our toes. And if you're able to get a sensation of that body part, that's lovely. You might notice how that body part is feeling. You might notice if there's any coolness, if there's a breeze touching you, how your clothes feel on that part. If you're not able to mentally connect in that way, that's okay. Just think of that body part conceptually. She said hand. Okay, yeah, I know I have a hand. Just try and move your attention slowly through the body. So what we'll do to start with, if it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, please do so. We just want to close the eyes to help to minimize any visual distractions. But if closing your eyes isn't comfortable for you, that's okay. You might just wish to lower your gaze, just so that, again, we start to minimize any visual distraction, perhaps lowering your gaze down to your hands or your chest, whatever feels right for you. And then when you're ready, we'll just start by taking our attention to the top of the head, just getting a sense of the scalp. And from there, just letting your awareness move down to your temple. And from the temples, we want to feel the forehead, allowing your attention just to slide over to the forehead. And from the forehead, down around the sides of the eyes. So just having a sense of the space around your eyes. From the areas around your eyes, over to the nose, so over to the center of the face, taking your attention to your nose and allowing your attention to slide down your nose to the tip. And from the tip of the nose to the space that meets the upper lip. From the upper lip, having a sense of the area around the mouth. And from the mouth, extending your awareness out to your cheeks and cheekbones. Sliding your attention out to the sides of the face, and from the sides of the face down to the jawbone and the chin. Again, back to the jawbone letting the jaw drop. And from the jawbone, allowing your awareness to move down the front of the neck. And from the neck, floating your awareness down to the top of the chest, perhaps noticing your collarbone. And just noticing how perhaps the collarbone just rises and falls with your breath. From the top of your chest, moving your awareness down the front of the torso. Letting your awareness rest in your tummy, in your lower abdomen. And from the lower abdomen, allowing your awareness to trace the sides of your body, so up along the sides of the ribs to the underarms. And your awareness from the underarms starts to trace the undersides of your arms, so moving along under the tricep, the inside crook of your elbows, beneath the forearm, beneath the wrist, across the palms of the hands. And just resting your awareness here, just noticing if you have or feel any particular sensations in your hands. Perhaps a tingling, it might be warm, it could be cool. And noticing also the shape that your fingers are in. Just the position that your fingers are in. And from here, then allowing your awareness to trace the tops of your hands and slowly moving your awareness up to the shoulders. And with your awareness at your shoulders, taking your awareness along the back of the torso, so perhaps feeling the shoulder blades. And as your awareness moves down your back, also having an awareness of how your back meets the chair that you're sitting against. And where your back touches the chair, and maybe where there's an empty space. From your lower back, taking your awareness to your hips and buttocks. Allowing your awareness now to trace the backs of your thighs. And here perhaps even noticing how the backs of your thighs meet the chair or the surface that you're sitting on. From the backs of your thighs, moving your awareness over the tops of the thighs. And down along the knees. Having an awareness of the shins and the calves. Having an awareness of your ankles and your heels. Having an awareness of the bottom of your feet and perhaps any footwear that your feet are in. Tracing your awareness from the soles of your feet up over the tops of the toes and feeling the tops of the feet. And allowing your attention to have an awareness of the lower part of your body from the tips of your toes to your waist. And having an awareness of your waist up to the top of your head. And having an awareness now of your entire body, just in the position that it is in, just as it is. And just noticing your breath, noticing if you can feel your breath. Perhaps noticing that it has slowed down a little since we first started this. And just as and when it feels right for you, just allowing your eyes to soften and just slowly and gently reopen. Coming back into this group where we are and noticing just how you feel And, you know, that was about 10 minutes. These practices don't even need to be 10 minutes. They can be 5 minutes. And sometimes after practicing them repeatedly, just by taking your own awareness, if you're sitting on the train, if you're waiting for a meeting, we can just take our mind, tracing it along our body. And because if we do it repeatedly, it becomes such a habit that our brains will just really quickly turn on to this is relaxation. And, you know, a 2-minute practice can really relax our body. If we have times, in the sessions that I do, I'll do this for about 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour and a half. And it can just be deliciously relaxing. But the body scan practice, if you're having problems sleeping, falling asleep, or getting back to sleep, a body scan practice. We always have our bodies with us. Just slowly tracing your awareness from top to bottom or bottom to top, and just notice how you feel. And if that's a practice that works for you, it's a tool. Not always for everyone, but a tool. So how was that?
Deliciously relaxing. Thank you, Angela.
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Oh dear. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. Look, I've got one more thing, if you could share with us just the name of those apps that you were mentioning before, so that everybody can get their pen ready and write them down.
Yes, the app that I use regularly is Insight Timer, INSIGHT Timer, Insight Timer. There's also, I think it's called Calm. I believe Headspace is another one. 10% Happier. That's a meditation app that I highly recommend. He also has a podcast. Dan Harris has a podcast called 10% Happier. So if you're interested in anything meditation, he is great. He also wrote a book called The Fidgety Skeptic, and he has a really interesting way of coming at meditation. He's great. Highly recommend him. Yes.
I think what we'll do is I'll get that information from you, Angela, and I'll write to everybody and let them know what that is.
Great.
About.
I'm happy to share some links. Awesome.
Great. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Really great content once again. And for everybody that's been asking, we will be loading the video onto the Melbourne Business Network website. We do have 2 more series left in the Wind Down Wednesday webinars. I'm just posted that in the chat room now if you'd like to book for the next one, which is Understanding and Calming the Nervous System. Look, you've put me to sleep already, Angela. So this is
well, we're going to do a little bit more of that next week, so get ready.
Anyway, this one is going to be talking about how your body reacts to stress and then how you can deliberately calm the nervous system down. So remember, everybody, to connect with Melbourne Business Network and or Angela on LinkedIn if you haven't already.